Good evening, everyone, and welcome into Season 2, Episode 5 of the Forge Podcast, brought to you by Shotgun Sports Network Alabama of the Shotgun Sports Network. My name is Ryan Messer, and we have got a lot to get into. We had a lot of stuff going on with the Bulls the past couple weeks, transactions, games, along with the Legion or the Squadron as well, and the Legion had their first couple games of the regular season as well. But before we get too far, we want to thank you guys for watching on Facebook and YouTube and listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Audible, iHeart, and much more. We are back up on the Audible podcast. So if you were listening to us on those platforms, we are back up and operational. All of our podcasts for season 2 are now up. So make sure you go back and catch up if you haven't already. But we also have to say thank you to Blue Spring Living Water, who continuously keep us hydrated. They're with their naturally minerally enriched water, bottled right at the source with no risk for contamination. And you can find it right at your local grocer, or if you go online to bluespringlivingwater.com, you can get it delivered right to your home or office. Find out more by going to bluespringlivingwater.com for more information. And with that, this is Season 2, Episode 5 of the Forge Podcast. We're going to start things off with the Birmingham Bulls, who had a bunch of transactions the past couple weeks. On last Tuesday, Corson Green was wound up getting waived. And then on that Thursday, we saw Kyle Powell waived as well. And then we saw on last Friday, Drake Glover made his return off of the IR. Then on Thursday, we wound up signing defenseman Cole Jungworth to a tryout contract. And then on Friday, Connor Scahill was released. So, but that did not last long because he was re-signed shortly after on Monday, following Tony Pentagon getting placed on the IR. So, we had a few games as well. Started off that last Friday with Roanoke Rail Yard Dogs. This is where they were actually the Cahaba Valley Vipers. So this was, if most people don't realize, most people should know, but if you don't know, the Cahaba Valley Vipers were the first team that Art Clarkson, who brought the Bulls back twice, and brought the Barons back and many other teams here in the Magic City. That was the first team he ever owned. So, was the team called the Vipers. So, that every year they do this in memorial for Art Clarkson. But started off with on Friday with Austin Rudebush in the net for Roanoke and Stewie in the net for the Bulls. Taylor Brierly got things started with a goal just 7-12 into the opening period. 7 minutes later, the Bulls went on a power play for a high stick. Unable to capitalize on that, they wound up going back on the power play for a trip just with only 10 to play in the period. And then Carson, in the second, Carson Rose wound up capitalizing on that power play just 30 seconds into the second period there. Roanoke wound up pulling Rudebush 2.5 minutes later, but was sent right back out 10 seconds later with a Connor Scahill hook. Following the penalty kill, we saw Andrew Ballant finding the back of the net just 3 minutes later. Then, just before the midway point of the second period, we saw Colton Olnick get a goal of his own to make it 4-0. Following that goal, we saw Roanoke make a change in the net, sending Tyler Roy out and bringing in Rudebush. The mask just past the midway mark of the second, we saw Matt Clark get charged with a hold. Then with 39 seconds later, Ryan Romeo was charged with a high stick. They were actually able to capitalize on one of those, but then we saw Andrew Ballant find the net just 15 minutes, just before the 15-minute mark of the second period. Then with 3.5 left to play in the second, we saw Troy McTavish get tied up with Bryce Martin, both of them earning minors for roughing. In the third, it got started off with Roy getting pulled just over a minute into the period, and he is barely off the ice before Kip Ladzianko was charged with a hook, sending Roy back out. The Bulls wound up pulling off a good penalty kill, and they did score 2 more goals. Roanoke did. One 7:42 into the period, and then the other with 7 seconds left to play, but it just wasn't enough in enough time, as Birmingham wound up winning it 5-3. That Saturday, we saw Austin Rudebush back in the net for Roanoke and Stewie in for the Bulls. Things got started early with Colton Olnick finding the net just 3:40 into the game. Then with 3 minutes later, we saw Drake Glover put the puck in the net himself. But then just a minute to play in the opening period, we saw Kyler Matthews get charged with a hook. And then the Dogs were able to capitalize on that just 21 seconds into the second period. They were actually able to score again just 5 minutes later, tying the game. Then with 2 minutes later, Kip Ladzianko got charged with a slash, putting the Bulls back on a penalty kill. They were unable to kill the penalty. But just a minute later, the Rail Yard Dogs scored again to take the lead. Following that goal, Joe Widmar was assessed with an ejection and a game misconduct for the Roanoke for using the R word. Just kind of intolerable there. And then we saw Dan Bremner, the head coach of the Rail Yard Dogs, kind of irate, going at it with the officials, and then later on with Coach Simmer. They were actually able to capitalize, but both teams wound up, getting assessed with minors on cross checks shortly after. In the third, things opened up with the Rail Yard Dogs scoring just 1:12 into the third. And then 2 minutes later, we saw Andrew Ballant in the box for a boarding. They did successfully kill that penalty, but it was just 3 seconds after it expired, they did get another one past Hayden. Then just over a minute later, there were minors for a charge on each team. And then Kip Ladzianko was able to stop the bleeding just a bit past the 8-minute mark of the third. And they wound up pulling Stewie just 6 minutes left in regulation. He returned 18 seconds later after Roanoke was charged with a trip, but unable to capitalize on that. They went back on the power play just 38 seconds after the penalty expired for an interference. With that was actually capitalized on just 48 seconds in, as Carson Rose was able to get his second goal of the night. And then they did pull Stewie just a minute under later, which was helpful as Rose was able to tie it up with 14 seconds left to play in regulation. Then, 7 seconds following the ensuing face-off, the Bulls went back on the power play for a delay of game, which kind of means a lot considering they wound up going to overtime. And in overtime, they did wind up killing through all that entire penalty and going to a shootout. They went 4 rounds before finally getting one in. Both teams were able to score there. Then they wound up going 7 more rounds before Carson Rose got his 5th of the night, walking it off, sealing the weekend sweep of the Roanoke Rail Yard Dogs and the Cahaba Valley Vipers are still undefeated. So, great weekend there. Then, this past weekend, we saw Thursday, we took on, the Bulls were back, and they took on the Huntsville Havoc. Started off with Mike Robinson in the net for the Havoc and Lotzie in net for the Bulls. Things got started with Kip Ledzianko finding himself in the box with a double minor for a high stick early in the period there. And after the Bulls successfully killed that penalty, they wound up going on the power play with 3:17 left in the opening period there. They didn't capitalize, but 27 seconds into the second period, they did get a goal there. A minute later, we saw Carson Rose answer with a goal of his own. Then Kip Ledzianko took the lead 3 minutes later by putting the puck in the net himself. Then just under 3.5 minutes later, we saw Colton Olnick charged with a minor for boarding, sending the Bulls on the penalty kill. 48 seconds in, the Havoc got charged with an interference. Unable to capitalize on that power play, Tony Epetagon got into it with Craig McCabe, earning them both roughing penalties. Just a minute later, we saw Phil Ledzianko finding the net. And then in the third, Nikita Kazarev was called for a trip. 2 minutes following the successful penalty kill, Kyler Matthews wound up getting charged with a roughing charge. They did capitalize on that one just 30 seconds into the penalty. And then with 47 seconds left to play, they wound up pulling Robinson, and he was sent back out there 2 seconds later by a slew footing penalty on Huntsville, which just finished things off, leaving the Bulls to win it 3-2. On Friday, we saw Huntsville back in Pelham again, and we had Mike Robinson in the net for the Havoc and Stewie back in there for the Bulls. Things started early with Havoc scoring just 2:28 into the game. Drake Glover answered back with a goal of his own just 1.5 minutes later. The Havoc wound up scoring again with just under 8 minutes left to play in the opening period. And then just 7 minutes later, Andrew Ballant was charged with a delay penalty there. And they did not capitalize, but in the third period, the Havoc did score just 1:45 into the period. 1:45 later, the Bulls did go on the power play for a slash, and Drake Glover capitalized on that just halfway through the power play. Then 4 minutes later, we saw Carson Rose put the Bulls back on the penalty kill for a trip, and they successfully killed the penalty and went on the power play for a high stick just 4 minutes later. They wound up pulling Stewie with 2:18 left to play, but it was just too late, and they wound up losing that game there. Currently, the Bulls are sitting at 24, 19, and 5, and in fifth place in the SPHL. They are 1 point behind the Fayetteville Marksmen at fourth. And then in first place, we have Peoria Rivermen. In second place is the Huntsville Havoc. And in third place is the Roanoke Royal Yard Dogs. All three of those have clinched the playoff contention. Coming up this week, they head to Macon to take on the Mayhem on Thursday. And then they go to Pensacola to take on the Ice Flyers on Friday and Saturday. Switching things over to the Birmingham Squadron. They had a few transactions themselves over the past couple weeks. On the 10th, the Pelicans wound up signing Mo Bamba to a 10-day contract. And then on the 11th, the Squadron wound up signing Will Brown, so to take that position there. Then on March 4th, they wound up taking on the Delaware Bluecoats. Things started out with both teams going back and forth. Things stayed close between both teams before Delaware went on a 13-point run midway through the first quarter. Delaware wound up holding a commanding lead throughout the remainder of the first half. Coming out of the half, they wound up trading shots, but with Delaware maintaining their lead through to the fourth quarter. Birmingham went to the fourth and went on a 21-point run, taking a 2-point lead midway through. This was followed by a strong defensive performance by both teams and them trading shots and leads to the buzzer when Delaware wound up missing a game-winning buzzer beater that would have won it, but Birmingham came away with the win there. This win was mostly thanks to some clutch shooting by Mo Bamba in his 26-point performance in that game. So no wonder he wound up getting signed. Then on March 6th, they wound up taking on the Grand Rapids Gold, where Grand Rapids started things off with a 5-0 lead. Birmingham quickly erased that lead and commanded the remainder of the first half, leading by as much as 12. Both teams wound up coming out of the locker room at the half, trading baskets, and with Grand Rapids chipping away and eventually leading through the midway point of the third quarter. The teams wound up trading leads throughout the remainder of the third, and then in the fourth, Grand Rapids came out hot, eventually taking a 14-point lead midway through the final quarter. In the final minutes, we saw Birmingham try to make a strong defensive push, but they just couldn't close it out. But even on the loss, Lester Quinones recorded a 31-point performance there in that game. They went back at it on the 8th. Just 2 days later, taking on the Grand Rapids Gold again. Birmingham started out red hot, jumping out to a 22-point lead early. Birmingham took advantage of that early lead, and kept the game in front of them throughout the first half, going into the locker room with a 23-point lead. Both teams wound up stepping up defensively in the second half, with Grand Rapids slowly chipping away at that lead, cutting it to 7 points into the final minutes of the third quarter. But Birmingham wound up maintaining control of that game. They did rebuild their lead to over 20 points midway through the final quarter. They did finally hold Grand Rapids to off with a final score of 128-107. On March 9th, they wound up taking on the Westchester Knicks. Things got started off with both teams trading shots early, and they kept things close eventually, with the Knicks building a commanding lead in the final minutes of the opening quarter there. In the second quarter, Birmingham wound up starting to chip away at that lead. They would eventually wind up taking that lead a few times in the final minutes of the first half. The Knicks did lead going into the second half, but in the second half, they wound up trading leads with no team really taking a commanding lead throughout the third quarter. And the game remained close through the fourth quarter, with the Knicks finally winning it off of some free throws in the final seconds of play. Then on Wednesday, they wound up taking on the Stockton Kings. Birmingham started off by jumping out to a 4-0 lead early, and then both teams wound up trading shots and leads throughout the first quarter. Stockton wound up taking more control of the game in the second half, and then they wound up leading a majority of the third quarter. Birmingham jumping out to a double-digit lead in the final minutes of the quarter there, and in the fourth quarter, Stockton wound up getting controlling the lead until Birmingham wound up going on a 14-point run, retaking the lead in the final minutes of the fourth quarter. And then Stockton came back and wound up tying things up at the buzzer, sending them to overtime. In overtime, the Squadron quickly jumped out to a 5-point lead, while the Kings did wind up making a three themselves, but Devon Reed wound up coming back with a corner three to walk it off at home in overtime against the Western Conference leaders. Then on Friday, we wound up seeing them take on the Santa Cruz Warriors. Santa Cruz jumped out to a 9-2 lead early. Birmingham did cut it down to 3 before they wound up trading shots, and they wound up keeping it close throughout the remainder of the opening period of play, with the Warriors controlling the lead there. Birmingham finally did make a comeback and tie things up midway through the second there, and then the Kings did retake control of the lead through the remainder of the second quarter, but Birmingham wound up chipping away at that lead again throughout the early minutes of the second half, even eventually trading leads throughout the remainder of the third. The Warriors did wind up starting the final quarter by going on an 8-point run. That was followed by another 7-point run, taking a commanding double-digit lead midway through the fourth quarter there. Birmingham did chip away at that lead and retook it with just over a minute left to play, but an alley-oop and a breakaway layup off of a turnover in the final seconds led to the Warriors beating the Squadron 113 to 100. 110, sorry. Then we saw on Sunday, they took on the Santa Cruz Warriors yet again, and things started off with both teams trading baskets, and then eventually Birmingham taking a 6-point lead. They kept things going back and forth throughout the midway point of the opening quarter, and the Warriors wound up going on an 11-point run, retaking the lead with just under 4 left to play in the first. Into the second, the Warriors wound up slowly extending their lead midway through that quarter there. And then Birmingham did step up on defense and cut the lead to 2 with just a minute left to play in the half. But then in the fourth, Birmingham quickly retook third, Birmingham quickly retook the lead before they eventually went on an 11-point lead midway through the third quarter, putting them up with a double-digit lead. The Warriors did eventually cut the lead down and eventually going on an 8-point run to retake that lead with just under a minute left to play in the third. But Keon Brooks did make a 3 to end the third quarter, and the Warriors quickly retook that lead and started extending it through the remainder of the game, eventually winning by 9 there. As it stands right now, the Squadron is 11-19, and they are in 15th place in the Eastern Conference of the NBA G League, and they have officially been eliminated from playoff contention. On Saturday, they will go to Frisco, Texas to take on the Legends, and been a kind of a rough season. They've been playing really good basketball. It's just whenever we get on a good run, we wound up losing our players to the Pelicans, as it seems we do every year. So, um, struggles there. Hopefully, we'll see something better in the off season and come back next season and start fighting for playoff contention. Switching things over to Legion FC. We found out that Alabama native and U.S. men's national team star Chris Richards has invested into the Legion FC ownership group. We had the opportunity to get an interview in the interview with him this past week, and Chris opened up things with why he decided to invest in this team.
Yeah, yeah, super excited to finally be a part of the Legion. You know, it's definitely a team that I've followed since leaving Birmingham, and again, I think it's just a really important and really necessary thing for me to join this to grow soccer in the South, but in particular in Birmingham. So again, I'm really excited for it. You know, it's the city that made me, it's the city that raised me, also it's the city that my family still lives in, and again, I'm really looking forward to this opportunity.
He then also talked about the culture behind the Legion here in Birmingham.
Growing culture for sure. I mean, I have people from all over the South texting me about the Legion, you know, and it's crazy because Ronaldo Damus actually we played together at FC Dallas for I guess half a year, and he was my roommate for maybe 2 weeks when I was at FC Dallas. So again, like I said, it's definitely a club that I feel is very ambitious, but also I think we kind of take the blue collar mentality to it that you know we are kind of the underdogs because again people don't really look at Birmingham as this soccer powerhouse. But like I said a little bit ago, I mean, I think with the offseason signings, you can really see how ambitious the club is, and it's really exciting to know that okay, we've established ourselves in the USL, but now we want to look at winning a title, bringing a title back to Birmingham. So again, I think it's a club that is still growing, but also a club that really sees plans for the future, and you can see it with the roster that they have for this upcoming season.
Then he also talked about a big, huge topic when it comes to the Legion and getting their own stadium.
Years. Yeah, I mean, I think definitely having a stadium of our own would be really big. Again, how I mentioned, it's kind of tough when you have such a big stadium to fill out games, and sometimes people can look at it from the outside looking in, saying that oh, the environment isn't that great. But I think you see it all over the USL. I mean, I think with Louisville you see it. I think with FC Cincinnati when they were in the USL you see it as well. So I think once you kind of have that environment, it makes teams fear coming to Birmingham to play in games. I think it's really going to be a club and a team that's really going to be I'd say front runners for me, you know. So again, I like the direction that the club's going in. I know that the ownership group definitely has ambitions for certain projects that they want to push in the future, and however I can help, that'd be great. But again, I think whether it's in the USL or whether it's in the Open Cup, whatever the case is, I think we want Birmingham to be a place where people see on the roster and like, oh, like, no, we really don't want to go there and play. So I think that's probably the number one thing I want for the club in the next few years.
What do
They
you
haven't
think?
talked to me about a new stadium, but I think it's something that every club is looking to do. Especially with with a potential Division One. I think it's definitely something that clubs would look forward to doing. So I think that's just my 2 cents. Again, I'm not head dog here by any means, but I guess as a player who uh, I guess probably aspires to see a lot out of their club that they play for. I think that's definitely something that as a I guess part owner is something I'd like to see for the group and also for the city.
And just great to talk to him there. But with them opening up the season, they're on the 8th at home against Loudoun United. Um, just great to see that because Birmingham got things started just in the second minute with Jake Roof finding the back of the net there. But they only held that lead until the 5th minute when Loudoun United wound up scoring to tie the game in the 31st minute. We saw Faniel Kavita shown a yellow card. Following this, Loudoun United was able to take the lead in the 33rd minute, and in the second half, Loudoun wound up scoring again in the 50th minute, and then in the 58th minute, Ramiz Hamuda was showed a yellow card, and then Moses Mensah was also shown a yellow card in the 70th minute. Jake Roof was wound up receiving a yellow card himself in the 75th minute, and Loudoun finally got another one, finally got a penalty called on them in the 82nd, but Birmingham had some issues making shots on target, leading to them falling at home in their season opener there. Then on Sunday, this past Sunday, they wound up taking on Louisville City, where they got things started in the 10th minute with Enzo getting shown a yellow card. And then Loudoun was able to hit the net just in the 30th minute. And then in the 40th minute, both teams were shown yellow cards where things got a bit chippy, as it always does when we take on Louisville City. But coming out of halftime, Ronaldo Damus was able to find the back of the net to tie things up in the 47th minute. Louisville FC was also shown a yellow card in the 47th minute, but after a back and forth battle, the game wound up ending in a draw in full time. But decent start. I'm seeing a lot more aggression and physicality to this team compared to what we saw the past couple of years. But we have a few games coming up. They open up the U.S. Open Cup on Wednesday, taking on the Little Rock Rangers of the USL2. And then on Saturday, they will head up to Michigan to take on Detroit City FC. So great to see all that's going on here with the Legion and the new ownership group. Hope to see the Legion continue and actually start winning some games there. Switching things over to the Birmingham Stallions. We had a few transactions on the 5th. We found out that the third quarterback will be former Philadelphia Star and former Memphis Showboat, Case Kukis. So crazy because in that quarterback room you have Alex Magoo, who wound up taking on Case Kukis in the first USFL championship. So awesome to see that. Just good to have him on board. And then on Monday, we wound up waiving Il Manning and signing guard Grant Miller. Then on Friday, Shee Smith wound up announcing his retirement. And then we wound up signing cornerback Fayon Hicks. So welcome these guys to the team. And we saw camp start this past week as well with a lot of stuff going on right now in the UFL. On the 7th, we wound up talking to Coach Holtz, and he started talking about how camp got started.
Exciting times right now. Really exciting times in the middle of camp. Exciting for a number of reasons. One, because it's exciting to see the players return from last year and the 35 players that we pretty much have back from last year and the familiar faces. And it's nice to be with them and have them jump right in and know the offense and know the defense. But it's also exciting with a lot of the new faces. You've got also have 30 new players on this roster, players that but I'm excited to watch them grow and develop in this offense and defense and what we're trying to do. But it is a fun time. We've started. It's great to see the excitement. It's great to see the energy, not only in their eyes, but when you look at the number of people that are on this call today, it's great to see the interest right now in not only the league, but the Birmingham Stallions and what we can try and put together for year 4, year 2 of the UFL, but really year 4 as we have now going into the 4th year of existence here. And it's been a lot of fun to watch it grow, to watch the wins, to see the fan base grow, to see the interest grow. You're finding better and better players year in and year out that are starting to come into this league. It is starting to become a viable option for a lot of players around the country to say, you know what, if I want to have an opportunity to get to the NFL or back to the NFL, that this may be one of my biggest opportunities is getting involved in a team in the UFL. So it's great to see the energy and to see the league grow, but it's also great, like I said, to see everybody's interest and everybody being here today.
We also had the opportunity to ask Coach to contrast this camp roster compared to last season's.
Last year, there were a lot of new faces last year because you were only able to protect so many players. Because of the merger, each league dropped 4 teams. Each league, the USFL and the XFL, dropped 4 teams. And so you had to cut a lot of your players and then try and draft some of the new guys. So I think all the rosters a year ago were probably 50% old and 50% new. I would think the same thing when you look at the teams this year. I think because of the caliber of talent that's coming into this league this year, there were a lot of people that made a lot of changes. And I think I don't know what that exact number is, but I would say that pretty much everybody kind of kept maybe about 25 to 30 players, and they brought in another 30 to 35 players. So I think it's pretty close to 50-50 in what everybody had from last year and this year, which I think is a good mix. I think this is a league you don't want to get old in. You're going to have some players come in. You're going to have a number of players leave that are going to have the opportunity to get into an NFL camp, that are going to make it in the NFL, which is what you want. You want them to come in, play for a year or two, get their opportunity into the NFL, and then bring another younger guy in that's seeking, that's really hungry about finding that opportunity. So I do think it's about 50-50 across the board on everybody's roster this year.
He then talked a bit about his relationship with quarterback Alex Magoo.
The signing of him, I was really excited. We lost Adrian Martinez last year. I know that Alex was released during the year because of his hamstring, because of an injury. I know that I was kind of cheering for him to be re-signed, but when he wasn't, when he did get re-signed, but then when he was released again, he was one of my first calls to say, hey, what are you thinking? You know what I mean? He goes, look, Coach, I'm going to try and get re-signed. If I get re-signed, I'm going to do it. If not, I'd love to come back. And that was all I needed to hear to be able to wait on him. And I waited and waited. And then he called me one day and said, look, it doesn't look like I'm going to get re-signed. So I want to come back and play. What works? I think there's a mutual respect on both sides. I think he's got a great understanding of this offense. I think that from a personality standpoint, we click. And I say we click because you can't take either one of us really too serious. We both want to have fun. We know that there's work to be done, and when there's work to be done, we got to get it done. But we both want to have fun doing what we're doing as well. And I really enjoyed coaching Alex. I think you can coach him hard. I think he's respectful. He listens. He's a great student. He tries to incorporate what you're trying to tell him into his game. He doesn't have all the answers. But I think he's just getting better and better in this offense with what we're trying to do. And I have great respect for him. I really want him to get his opportunity again, but I certainly enjoy having him on our roster with what he's able to do with his talents and abilities.
Then he got to talking about the change in GM and how that affects the culture there and finalizing that roster.
Oh, it's been different. I think you hit the nail on your head there. It's definitely been different. With Zach and I being together for 3 years, there was just an understanding. It was almost like we would make the same decision without talking to each other, just because we saw things on the same page. But that's 3 years of being together. That's 3 years of being together. Him understanding me, what I want. Him understanding me, understanding him and what he wanted. I thought we had a great chemistry. I still talk to him quite regularly. I have great respect for Zach Potter, and I think that's why the whole thing worked. But we understood what each other wanted. When Zach left, I went through about a month process of the free agent without having anybody in place. And so I was having to make all those decisions. I think it created a much bigger workload on me once Zach left and took that job to be able to make some decisions and to be able to put some free agents together. And then we were able to sign Paul, and now Paul and I have started working together and kind of understanding what Paul wants, what he's thinking, but also I want him to understand what I'm thinking and what I want. And so right now we are in the beginning stages, a lot like Zach and I were year one when we were trying to draft a football team at the very beginning. So I think Paul is a very knowledgeable guy. He's been around the game for a long time. He was an NFL scout for 31 years. He's not new to this, but he's new to this position. And I think right now he's probably walking a little bit on eggshells, like, okay, what do you want? How do you want me to handle this? And I think as we continue to learn each other and he starts to understand how to do things and what things are important to me, I think I think we'll be great. So I'm looking forward to working together with him during the season. But it was definitely a different off season. A, not having Zach, and B, having to do a lot more of that on my own because we didn't have a GM there for about a month.
Then we got the chance to talk to quarterback Alex Magoo himself, and he opened up about coming back to the Birmingham Stallions.
Yeah, I mean, it was cool just getting back to playing quarterback again. Has been not an adjustment, but kind of feels like a homecoming. You know, it's like kind of just what I'm supposed to be doing. I feel more natural playing it, and it was good sitting in a room with Skip again, and hearing him talk and our relationship that we have, and then seeing all the guys was fun. But practice has been really good. Guys are definitely exceeding expectations, I would say. Everybody's doing really good, picking it up. And that's all you can ask for really for the first week. Is just guys, kind of knowing what they're doing. We'll get into how you do it, but as long as they know what they're doing, we can teach off that.
Then he talked about his relationship with Coach Holtz and how they, are so good together.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's about respect. I think that we have a mutual respect for each other. I respect his coaching career. I respect his coaching style. I respect the way he calls games. I respect the way he teaches players, and he's not a big yeller screamer. He just wants to help people, and he always says he's a teacher first, then a coach. And I think that's one of the more factual statements that he's ever said. And I just think it works out because he kind of respects, what I do and how I do it. And I just like to have fun. I like to put smiles on people's faces. And I think if you're not having fun doing something, why are you going to do it? And I kind of treat everything in my life like that. And I try to bring it to the football field. And there's times where you got to be serious. You got to lock in and focus up. But that doesn't mean you got to be somebody you're not. My true self is a joking kind of style. And I think Skip gets that. And it's hard to find, honestly, coaches like that understand that when I start acting like I'm not trying to be like lighthearted and stuff, then I start acting weird and I don't play as well. And I'm not myself. And coach really lets me be myself. And I think that's why our relationship has worked the way it has.
And then shout out to my buddy Luke Miller from State of the Stallions. He broke the ice and asked about the biggest topic in Alex Magoo's hair. And this is what he had to say.
Yeah, well, so I left here. I was in Green Bay for the year, and then after the season, it was just too long. It was just too much. I couldn't do it anymore. So I went to a shorter haircut that was just normal, kind of normal for me, whatever. And then we had a hurricane in Tampa when I was rehabbing my hamstring, and we didn't have power for like a week and a half. And I was so bored that I just buzzed my hair, just like really, really short, like really short, like that short, all the way over. And then I was like, well, this doesn't look normal either. So then I was like, let's just make it a joke. Let's just kind of joke around. So I just dyed it blonde, like white blonde. And it's just kind of stuck ever since then. I mean, it's just kind of keeping people on their toes. You just never know. I might show up with a full-on red wig tomorrow. You never know. But there's no inspiration behind it. I'm just kind of it's just whatever. I don't know. But yeah, it's almost gone though. The blonde's almost gone. So probably by like week 3, it'll probably be gone.
Then on Thursday, we got to talk to Coach Holtz yet again. Started out with an update on camp and discussed the scrimmage with Arlington Renegades.
Perfect. Welcome, everybody. As we are now about 10 days into camp here, it has been a productive week right now. I think we're getting past the installation with everything of putting in the offense and defense, really starting to get a good idea of where our team is, seeing what they have the capability of doing, and really had a scrimmage yesterday against Arlington. So we had a couple hard days early in the week, had a scrimmage yesterday, walk through today. We'll go a little bit later on Friday, and then start another heavy padded practice on Saturday. But I like the progress that we're making right now. We are really just learning what all these guys can do, because everybody's been running around a little bit like trying to figure out what to do. And now you're really starting to get a pretty good idea of where these guys are. And as a football team, I liked the scrimmage yesterday. I loved the energy, both Arlington and Birmingham. I thought it was a great scrimmage. It was very productive. It was very positive. Everybody working together. It wasn't a lot of fights and all those type of things. I think this football team is a very serious football team. I think this football team is a very mature football team. And I was really impressed with the way they handled the scrimmage yesterday. And I can say the same thing for Arlington. I thought both teams were very businesslike and what our purpose was and why we were there and why we were going against each other. But so far, I like a lot of the progress that we're making. We have about another week to 8 days before we have to make cuts. And what is starting to really show up is these are going to be some very difficult decisions for us. I think we have some really good football players that are really bought in, that are really handling themselves well. And we're going to have to make some hard decisions about which players are going to give us the best opportunity to try and go out and be successful in the field on Saturday. But love the attitude, love the work ethic, and love where we are right now. Just you're in the middle of camp. I mean, it's Groundhog Day. Every day you get up and go through the same routine. You come in, you have your team meeting, you have your position meetings, your special team meetings. You have lunch, you go to practice, you come back, you watch a film, you get your players out of here about 5 or 6, and then we start getting ready for the next day's practice. So it's just right now it's part of camp. And so like where we are right now, like where we're going, said before, we're not where we were at the very beginning. We're not where we're going to be at the end of camp, but thank goodness we're not where we were when we started. So we're just going to keep trying to making progress.
He then talked about upcoming cuts and what the difficulty is in that.
You know, I think you've got a lot of guys, like you said, you've got a lot of guys that are doing some really good things across the board. And I'm just going through, I thought the offensive line room, I think the scrimmage Saturday didn't go to clean it, or scrimmage yesterday didn't go to clean anything up. It just made it harder, because some of those guys are really good football players and played really well. I think the same thing when I look at the receivers and the tight ends. We've got a great nucleus of guys that have been here, but we also have a lot of new faces. I think the linebackers, are going to make it hard. I think we're starting to get some injuries a little bit in the secondary. which are probably stunting a couple guys' growth. You know what I mean? Where they're not out there getting all that work. But I don't know if there's one that's going to be harder than the other right now. The one thing that we're not able to do, we can't go off everybody's resume. You know what I mean? We can't make our decisions just who's been in the most camps, who's been in the NFL the longest. I mean, we've got to look at through a 12-game season of staying healthy, who are the guys that give us the best chance to win? And that's really ultimately what these decisions are going to come down to. But they're going to be very difficult because I think really outside of every position other than the secondary, I don't know that we've really had anybody missing anything. You know, maybe one offensive lineman, but outside of that, I think everybody's staying healthy and everybody's getting better. And we had a staff meeting and talked about it. Our job is not to make that decision today. Our job is to bring everybody around. And I think here in the next week is when you're going to see the most growth from these new guys because now they know what to do. And now they're going to really have an opportunity to play a lot faster. So believe it or not, as much as I hate to say this, and it pains me to say it, if we made the decision today, it's probably going to be a lot easier than when we make it 8 days from now, because I think it's going to be even closer than it is today. We've got some really good football players and some great people on our roster right now.
Then he got to talking about the status of the quarterback room, which is a little bit different compared to the past few seasons.
No, like last year, you had two new faces, and Jamar was returning. And really, with two new faces, I needed to see what they could do. And they came in, they had learned it. We had Zoom meetings before with Matt and Adrian. So when we got here, they were ready to roll. I think what makes this one a little bit different, you have two guys that have been here, that have been in the offense, that know it, in Matt and Alex. And I think those two are getting the bulk of the reps right now. You have a Case that has come in. As I told him, it's like a 100-yard race, and everybody else has about a 50-yard head start. So it's a little bit harder for him because he's just now learning the offense. For the first time, he's hearing it for the first time. He's done an unbelievable job. He's a very intelligent quarterback. He's very smart. I just don't know how much time or reps I'm going to have to give him before we start getting into the beginning of the season. So right now, the guys that are running full speed right now are Matt and Alex, and those guys are getting the bulk of the reps right now. I think they're both doing a really good job. I mean, it's one of those things just like last year. You chart every throw, you chart every completion, you chart every read, you chart every interception, you chart every accuracy ball, you know what I mean? It's right now you've got two very, very talented quarterbacks. And ultimately it's going to come down to is what I said earlier, who gives us the best chance to win. I think both of them definitely have the talent to win. I think both of them are doing a really nice job. Both of them have a really good grasp of this offense right now. But I think the guy probably that, I don't want to say this on the outside looking in, because I think Case Cookus has done an unbelievable job. I think it's unfair to him right now because he's been in the offense for 3 days and these other guys have been in it for over a year. And so I think it's a little bit hard to ask him to jump in. When he jumps in right now and I'm giving him some spot throws, I'm giving him some reps. But I think because I'm trying to bring him up to speed and get him to move along quicker. But I also think that right now he's got smoke coming out of his ear holes when he's standing behind that center. You know, it's like, okay, let's see, over on this side, I got this. On that side, I got that. What's my drop? I mean, right now he's overthinking it just because he's had it for such a short period of time. But even in the 3 days that he's been here, I think the game is slowing down for him. I think he's very intelligent. He's very smart. He's doing a good job picking it up. But that's where it would be a difference. I think right now, it's not, you just don't have the reps, you don't have the time, and unfortunately they didn't all come in at the same level as far as when they got here and how much offensive knowledge they had. So right now Matt and Alex are getting the bulk of the reps right now, and I would say would be 1 and 2, and Case would be 3, but he's doing a great job in learning it and coming along. And I would think by the time we get to the season, and if he has to play early, I would think that he would be ready. But as much as anything, I think by the middle of the season, he'll be flowing really strong. So like what's going on there right now, but that's how it's different than years past.
Then we had the opportunity to talk to Matt Corral, and we asked him about the progression of the team and how it was this time compared to this time last year. Then he was asked about his Hispanic heritage, and this was his response. But he had some great interviews there. A lot to cover through tonight. Thank you guys. Sorry for the long show and the delayed release. We had a lot to cover and a lot to edit. Clipping some videos to get this stuff ready for you guys. And we will continue to bring you interviews throughout the season. And we will also be attending Barron's Media Day in a couple weeks. We are also happy to announce we're credentialed for the Birmingham Stallions this year, along with the Barons, the Biscuits, and the Trash Pandas, along with the Birmingham Legion. Just continuing to bring you coverage of Alabama sports. So with that, that's all we've got for this week, and I will see you guys next week, and good night.